Hey up and welcome to Callums Corner. Welcome to the Football Corner. So it's been a big week for me this week and a big week for the Football Corner.
All right, have we got any? Actually, will you just intro this for us today, mate?
Absolutely. Hey up and welcome to the kickoff.
Yeah, an appearance on the kickoff with the legend that is the true Geordie. Now, I was a little bit worried before I went because, Brian, he's got a big personality. Me, I've got a big personality. Sometimes when you have two big personalities like that, you can end up kind of like two stags, like locking horns. But luckily, it wasn't like that at all. He's a lovely guy and we got on like a house on fire. Also, there was Lawrence with his tousled hair, who at one point did say I was beautiful. I didn't really know how to take that. He seems quite metrosexual, sexually kind of dexterous. So I wasn't sure whether it was a little bit of a come on or whether he was joking. But I put it out of my mind and it was fine. And there was also Statman Dave, who very much knew his stuff, and there was Elliot Hackney, an absolute legend. Those three were kind of the filling in the alpha male sandwich, if you will. Yeah, I loved it. I really enjoyed it. I watched the Arsenal-Chelsea game, and a few Arsenal fans have been in touch with me since then. I was a bit harsh on them. They're a new team just coming together, and I was expecting too much. So I'm going to explain a little bit about my feelings about Arsenal, because I think it all comes down to effective leadership at the top. And I'm going to make that my subject to speak about this week. Not just Arsenal, but a couple of the clubs at the top, and talk about why a couple of the clubs are really getting that right and some of them just aren't. Before we do that, we will have a little look back at last week's results. I'll bring those up onto screen. No massive surprises. I thought Newcastle were turgid. That was a chance for them to get some points on the board against a very poor Cardiff side, and they were awful. And Kennedy, absolutely one of the worst performances that I've ever seen from a Premiership player. It was awful. I don't know why they let him take the penalty after the game that he'd had. Really, really poor. Everton, great win for them. Really, really solid they looked against Southampton. Theo Walcott getting on the score sheet, which is great news for them. And also Richarlison continuing his electric start to the season. Everton have started the season very strongly. Leicester, big win at Wolves. I really rate this Wolves side. That for them and for their manager in particular was a really important win. Watford going great guns at the moment, beat Burnley very comfortably. Gray scoring against his former side. Watford have really made a very good start to the season so far. Manchester City smashed Huddersfield 6-1. It was a surprise to no one. If you didn't have Aguero as your captain in your dream team, you're either pissed or mental. It's worrying how good Manchester City look already, isn't it? So Chelsea beat Arsenal 3-2. It was a crazy game. Arsenal could have scored a few more, to be honest with you, but then so could Chelsea. Chelsea, I do think, deserved the win. They were very much better. They look like they're a lot further along in their project under Sarri than Arsenal do under Emery. The players seem to have embraced it a lot more and seem to be a lot more comfortable in the new system, which is quite surprising given that Sarri has actually had a lot less time to work with his team than Emery, which is worrying for the Arsenal fans. So West Ham, they lost to Bournemouth, which was a really, really big loss for them, I feel. They remain pointless for the season so far. Big question marks over them. There's still that continuing unease when they're playing at home, which seems to have kind of stemmed over from last season. And for me, Mark Noble and Jack Wilshere as a midfield partnership in the Premier League is just not going to work. Tottenham Hotspur looked very solid against Fulham. They dispatched them with ease. Brighton had a fantastic win against Manchester United. I cannot overstate how good they were in that game. Defensively, they were incredibly strong. They wanted the ball. Their pressing was exceptional. They worked hard. They looked sharp. Brighton were fantastic in that game. Equally, Man United were an absolute bag of arse. Their defence, the whole of it, looked poor. Both of the central defenders, signed by Mourinho, were just dog poo. Fred did not look like a £50 million player. My God, he was awful. The whole team was massively off the pace. And I guess that kind of brings me to my main point of this video. Effective leadership at the top. Because for me at the moment, Manchester United are one of the big clubs who do not have effective leadership at the top. When you've got a manager like Mourinho, you have either got to back him or you've got to sack him. If he's very unhappy with the way the club's being run, and it's coming out at the moment, there's plenty of newspaper stories. The Mirror's put one out today saying any other club, he would have quit by now. If you've got a manager like Mourinho, you back him, and they just have not done that this season. They're second guessing him. If he doesn't want Martial there, it's got to be the manager's decision. You get rid, right? If he wants to bring in new central defenders, you've got to back him. You can't be as a chief executive, as Woodward has done, you cannot have him saying that Bailey and Lindelof and Jones are good enough, that Maguire or Alderweireld wouldn't have been a step up. If the manager feels that, you've got to do that business, right? And Man United have not done that. For me, they are one of the clubs who have just lost. They have a vacuum of effective leadership at the top. And for me, effective leadership is a chairman who wants to win, who makes that his priority, who's going to set up the team, the club, to focus everything on making sure that they're going to have the best team in the world. And Man United are not doing that anymore. When Ferguson left, the worst thing that happened was that their previous chairman also stood down and Woodward came in, vastly inexperienced at that level. It's not to say he hasn't done good work. He has. You know, their corporate sponsors have gone up from something like 12 to 80 under Woodward. But he is not experienced enough. He has not got that footballing knowledge to go out there and say, we're going to make Man United the best team in the world. Well, at least that's not what his actions are doing. He's not backing his manager, and if he's got even a question mark over it now, he's got to get rid of Mourinho, because Mourinho will implode. He will make this season just be a write-off for Man United unless they act in some way. That brings me nicely on to Arsenal, who I feel have suffered a similar fate to Man United, in that David Dein was never properly replaced. The work he did alongside Arsene Wenger cannot be underestimated. The signings that he pushed through, and as soon as he left, Arsenal signings took a massive, massive step down. You know, there's been so many occasions when Wenger could have signed world-class players and he just pulled back at the last minute. Higuain, when he left Real Madrid, didn't want to push it at 32 million. Previously, he'd been interested. It went to 32 million, the price. He backed out of it. 3 years later, Higuain goes for 80 million pounds. You know, Suarez, meet the release clause by £1 or something. You should have bid an extra £1 million. Push that deal through. Kante, you know, Wenger didn't want to pay the wages. He ends up going to Chelsea. Arsenal end up signing Buddy Xhaka. There's been a vacuum of power at Arsenal for a number of years. Someone to really push through the signing. Someone to take control of the Sanchez deal and just sell him. Why keep him? It was terrible business keeping Sanchez there. He did nothing for that half season. He lost about £40 million in his value, and you end up selling him for a bit of money to Man United and bringing in a player who Mkhitaryan wasn't really needed. He wasn't really the answer to replace Sanchez. So for me, I know Arsenal are trying to do business differently now. They are adopting a more continental model, maybe mimicking the way that Borussia Dortmund used to do it. There's a lot of links there with the staff that have come in. Now, what disappointed me most about the transfer window is that if you're going to do it this new way, right, you've got to commit to it. If you're going to spend nearly £20 million out of your quite small budget on a new goalkeeper, you've then got to play him. If you're going to play this style, passing out from the back, Peter Cech's not your man. Peter Cech should have been let go. He's on massive wages. He should have been out of the club. I don't know why he's been kept, and I definitely don't know why he started the last 2 games. Yes, it's going to take time to implement, but for me, it's disappointing that Arsenal didn't commit a bit more to Emre in this transfer window. They didn't try and clear the decks a bit more, give free transfers to some of the deadwood that's been there for years, you know, clear out the big wages, and give them a hefty transfer budget to really start trying to claw some of the ground back on the big clubs. Now, as an example of a club who is doing it effectively, leadership at the top, you need to look no further than a team, you could say Man City, but it's, you know, obviously Man City have a massive, massive advantage with their almost bottomless wealth. However, you do have to look at what has been built there, and not a penny has been wasted in terms of the infrastructure of the club, in terms of the vision. They wanted the best coach in the world. They've gone out there and brought him in. They've wanted the best scouting system. They wanted a network of clubs who were going to act as feeder clubs for Manchester City. They have done all of that. They have incredibly effective leadership. They have transformed the club there. And a club that's done it for a little bit less money is Liverpool. You know, as soon as they were taken over by the Fenway Group, whatever you call them, right, the leadership has been effective. Yeah, they knew they didn't have as much money as Man City. They were going to have to do it piece by piece. But that is what they've done. You know, they refused to let Suarez go when his release clause had been met. Reminded me a little bit of the way Alex Ferguson used to do business. You know, we're going to keep the best players we've got for as long as possible. When we sell our best players, we're not going to waste the money now. We're going to go out and we're going to buy the absolute best players we can. We're going to wait for Van Dijk. like. You know, we're going to wait for Keita. And the way that Liverpool have done it has been absolutely brilliant. That is effective leadership at the top. And that is what has been missing at Man United and Arsenal. Chelsea, obviously, have got Roman Abramovich, so there's a clear vision there. He's a little bit impatient for my liking, but they do win trophies and you can't knock it. Tottenham are one of the clubs who I think the leadership needs to make up its mind. They seem to be almost shocked that they're now there challenging for the title. It's happened a lot quicker than they thought. They're expecting to hoping just to be in the Champions League, I think, taking that extra revenue and funding the stadium. Now they find themselves there. They've got a team almost capable of fighting for the Premier, the title, and they've just not taken that step forward. They've not committed those resources to buying those extra 3 players who could make them genuine contenders, which for me would be disappointing as a Tottenham fan. But equally, you've got to say the club is taking big strides forward. The new stadium, they are qualifying year in, year out now for the top 4. They're established there, so there has been growth. But I think there's so much more potential there. If I was a Tottenham fan, I'd want them to push on that a little bit more. Well, that will do it for today's football video, I think. Next week, I'm going to do a bit on the Championship as well. Oh no, we need to talk about the fantasy football. This is my team. I had a turgid week, absolutely turgid. If it wasn't for Aguero being my captain, it would have been shocking. This is the top 10. It's pretty much unchanged from last week. There is a clear gap opening up now between the real men and the pretenders, which I have to count myself as at the moment, which I don't like. Anyway, big changes coming up. I will publish my team. It will be over on my website, along with all of my predictions for this weekend and my cheeky betting tip. That will be below in the description, a link to that, where you can also find my merchandise as well if you want, Luke. Right, I am off to Manchester tomorrow for the fight, so I'll be making a special vlog going to the boxing match. Yeah, really excited about that. And next week I will have a lot more time and I will start making proper videos again. And also I think tonight I might do a little live stream just because I miss you guys. Right, hope you're all well. If you enjoyed the video, please do leave a like. If you didn't, you thought it was a bag of arse, leave a dislike. And maybe I'll see you later, live about 8, 9 should we say?